When the lawyer read the will, Clara Hale felt the ground slip from beneath her feet. Her father had left her nothing. The entire estate, the house, the accounts, the stocks, had gone to his new wife, Victoria. She sat across from Clara, her hair perfectly styled, with the faintest hint of a smile on her lips. Clara didn't cry. She had long since realized that to her father, a young wife mattered more than the daughter he once claimed to love. He didn't even look at her. The moment was surreal, like a cruel joke. She had spent years by his side, working late nights in his company, making sacrifices, being the daughter who had always stood by him. And now, she was nothing to him, not even a mention in his final testament. The lawyer closed the folder, his voice neutral, professional. That concludes the reading of the will. Victoria exhaled, stretching her fingers elegantly, as if she had just wrapped up a pleasant afternoon tea. I do hope there are no hard feelings, dear. Clara stared at her, feeling nothing. No rage, no sadness, just an empty void where love had once existed. She pushed her chair back and stood. No feelings at all, Victoria. Just relief that I'll never have to see you again. Her father said nothing as she walked out. Not a word, not a glance. A year passed. She moved on. She worked harder than ever, threw herself into projects, built a life on her own terms. The wounds hardened into scars. Then he came back. It was late when she heard the knock. A hesitant, almost apologetic sound. When she opened the door, she barely recognized the man standing before her. Her father, Mark Hale, once powerful and commanding, now looked like a ghost of himself. His suit hung loosely on his frame. His hair had thinned. His face was drawn with desperation. He uttered just one word. "Baby girl." She didn't move, didn't invite him in. She waited. Silence stretched between them like a chasm, too deep to cross. His voice broke. "I need your help." She wanted to laugh, but the sound wouldn't come. He had turned his back on her, chosen Victoria over his own flesh and blood, and now he was here, empty-handed, broken. Victoria took everything, he continued, his voice hoarse. She drained the accounts, sold the house. She ran. Clara exhaled slowly. "I faked my death," he admitted, eyes darting downward. "It was the only way to escape the debts. I thought Victoria would wait for me, that we'd start over. But she betrayed me." Clara felt nothing. Not sympathy, not hatred, just a strange sense of inevitability. "I have nowhere else to go," he murmured. The words echoed between them, heavy with irony. She remembered when he had told her, as he signed his fortune away to Victoria, "You're young. You'll manage." And now, here he was, begging. She stepped aside. He entered, moving slowly, as if waiting for her to shove him back into the cold. She poured them both a drink, sitting across from him. "Tell me everything." And so he did. He spoke of debts he had hidden, of the mounting pressure from creditors, of the decision to vanish, and the faith he had placed in Victoria, of the day he returned, only to find their house empty, the accounts wiped clean, of the humiliation, the loneliness, the slow, crushing realization that he had lost everything, not just money, but the people who mattered. Clara listened, without pity. Finally he looked at her, eyes wet, voice raw. "I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm still your father." She sipped her drink. "Number you were my father." He flinched. "Clara, please." She leaned forward, her voice steady. "You chose her. You erased me. Now you want me to fix your mess." His hand trembled. "I have nothing left." A long pause stretched between them. Then, without a word, Clara reached for her checkbook. She wrote a sum, tore the page, and handed it to him. "This is a one-way ticket," she said. "Disappear." He took the check with trembling hands, eyes flickering between her and the paper. That's it? She nodded. That's it. He hesitated, as if searching for something in her face. A trace of love, a glimmer of hope. But there was nothing. As the door closed behind him, Clara felt something strange. Not regret. Not relief. Just finality. This was her revenge. Not hatred, not gloating. Just an ending. Her father had betrayed her. And now she had betrayed him. Coldly, without emotion. She was no longer the little girl waiting for his love. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't wait for him to turn around. Didn't hope to see remorse or gratitude in his eyes. I just closed the door, placed my palm against its cold surface, as if pressing everything that once connected us into that final touch. My hands didn't tremble. My breathing was steady. Inside, neither emptiness nor triumph. Just a faint, barely perceptible shadow of relief. I walked back to the living room, sank onto the couch and closed my eyes. His words kept replaying in my mind. I have nowhere to go. How strange. Once he had decided I would manage, that I needed nothing. And now, fate had turned the tables. He was the one who couldn't manage. A few minutes passed before I got up, almost on autopilot, and reached for my phone. I opened the browser and typed in a name, Victoria Hale. No trace of her. No news. No articles. She had vanished, just like my father's money. But women like her don't disappear without a trace. They find new victims, new opportunities. She was out there somewhere, basking in her victory. And then, something inside me clicked. Revenge. I hadn't spent years searching for her. Hadn't plotted or schemed. I thought that by leaving it all behind I had freed myself. But now, after seeing my father, broken, betrayed, stripped of everything, I realized Victoria hadn't just destroyed him. She had shattered a part of me too. I looked at my phone again. I needed to find her. I didn't hesitate. My fingers moved instinctively, typing variations of her name, searching through social media, old articles, business directories. Nothing. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air. But women like Victoria don't just vanish. They transform. They reinvent themselves. She had taken everything from my father, and by extension, from me. And she had gotten away with it. For now. I leaned back against the couch, exhaling slowly. This wasn't just about my father. It wasn't even about the money. It was about justice. About balance. He had chosen her over me, and in doing so he had condemned himself. That wasn't my burden to carry. But Victoria had knowingly, deliberately destroyed lives. And she would do it again. I picked up my phone again and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Clara. The voice on the other end was cautious, surprised. "Hey, Logan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I need a favor." A pause. Then a chuckle. "Haven't heard that in a long time." "Yeah, well," I sighed. "It's been a long time since I needed to find someone who didn't want to be found." Logan was an old friend. Someone who had once worked in private investigations before moving into high-end security. He knew how to dig, how to uncover secrets buried under layers of deception. "Send me what you have," he said, his tone shifting into something more professional. "I'll see what I can do." I hung up and stared at the screen for a moment before opening an email draft. I attached every piece of information I had. Old addresses, business records, anything I could find. Then, I hesitated. Why was I doing this? For my father? Number. That part of me had long been buried. For myself? Maybe. But it was more than that. Victoria had built her life on betrayal, on deception, on taking what wasn't hers. And she had never faced any consequences. That was about to change. Days passed and Logan worked fast. By the end of the week I had a name, a location, and a new identity. Victoria was no longer Victoria Hale. She was now Veronica Sinclair, living in Miami, wrapped in another lie, another life, a new man, a new fortune. Logan sent me a file. Photos, financial records, addresses. I stared at them for a long time. Veronica, looked the same. Ageless. Perfectly put together. Her lips curled in that same knowing smirk, the one she had worn while sitting across from me at the lawyer's office, when she knew she had won. I clenched my jaw. She was playing the same game, just with a different opponent. I scrolled through the details Logan had sent. The man she was with now, Daniel Whitmore, wealthy, divorced, CEO of some high-end property development company. He was older, but not by much. Handsome in that graying at the temples, well-groomed way that men with too much money tend to be. I knew what she was doing. I had seen it before. She was setting the stage for the next vanishing act. I could warn him. I could send him everything Logan had dug up, show him who she really was before she drained him dry. But that would be too easy. Victoria was a master manipulator. A simple warning wouldn't be enough. She would turn it around, play the victim, weave another story. No. If I was going to do this, I had to do it right. I had to destroy her completely. I booked a flight to Miami. The air was thick with humidity when I landed, the kind that clung to your skin. I checked into a hotel near the beach. Something inconspicuous but comfortable. Then I waited. I watched. Veronica, moved in predictable patterns. Yoga in the mornings, a quiet lunch at an upscale cafe, evenings spent at exclusive charity events clinging to Daniel's arm. She was good, charming, poised, perfectly constructed. But so was I. I found my opening on a Friday evening at one of those insufferable high society events. A charity auction, men in tuxedos, women in gowns that cost more than most people's rent. It was her world, her domain. She didn't see me at first, but I saw her. The way she moved, the way she leaned into Daniel, her fingers brushing his sleeve just enough to remind him she was there. And then, our eyes met. For a moment she froze. Just a flicker, barely noticeable to anyone but me. Then she smiled. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. She excused herself from Daniel's side, weaving through the crowd with effortless grace, until she stood in front of me, her head tilting slightly. "Clara," she murmured, as if we were old friends running into each other by chance. "What a surprise." I smiled back. "Small world, isn't it?" She studied me, searching for an angle, for a weakness. I gave her none, because this time I was the one holding all the cards. Veronica, didn't flinch. She was too skilled for that. Instead, she let a soft chuckle escape her lips, tilting her head just slightly as if amused by my presence. "What brings you to Miami, Clara?" she asked, her voice smooth as silk. "I had no idea you were the type for charity events." I shrugged, taking a sip of my champagne. "Oh, you know me. Always full of surprises." She didn't like that answer. I saw it in the way her fingers twitched slightly, the only crack in her perfectly constructed mask. "And how have you been?" she continued, her tone light but probing. "After everything. I imagine it must have been difficult for you." Ah, there it was, the subtle reminder of what she had taken from me. I smiled. "Oh, I've been great, actually. Turns out losing a house and an inheritance isn't the worst thing that can happen. It just teaches you to rebuild." She nodded slowly, still trying to read me. "That's inspiring." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough to make her uneasy. "What about you, Victoria? Or should I say, Veronica?" This time the mask did slip, just for a second. A flicker of something sharp in her eyes before she smoothed it over. "I don't know what you mean," she said lightly, but I heard the tension in her voice. "Oh, I think you do," I whispered. "Daniel seems like a lovely man, successful, Wealthy. Exactly your type. A slow, careful breath. She was calculating now. You must be mistaken, she said with a polite smile. But if you'd like, I can introduce you to him. I'm sure he'd love to meet an old friend of mine. I grinned. That won't be necessary. I already introduced myself. She stiffened. That was my first real victory, the first sign of panic beneath the surface. Of course, I continued, swirling my champagne in my glass. I didn't tell him everything. Yet. But you know me, Victoria. I love a good story. And yours is so fascinating. Her smile tightened. What do you want, Clara? She asked, her voice a fraction lower. I set my glass down on a passing waiter's tray and met her gaze, unwavering. Nothing, I said. Just to see how this one plays out. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't have to look back to know she was watching me, her mind racing, already trying to stay ahead of the game. But this time she wouldn't, because I was already miles ahead. The night wasn't over. Not for me. I didn't leave the party. Instead, I found a quiet corner of the venue, a place where I could observe without drawing too much attention. From there, I watched Veronica, try to compose herself. She smiled, chatted, even laughed, but there was something stiff in her movements now, something forced. I had shaken her, and she hated it. Good. I swirled the ice in my empty glass, waiting for the next move. Because there would be one. Women like Victoria never sat still when the walls started closing in. And then it happened. She excused herself from a conversation and disappeared down a hallway. Not toward the restrooms, not toward the terrace. No, she was heading toward the private lounges. I waited exactly 1 minute before following. The hallway was dimly lit, the hum of the party fading behind me. I moved quietly, stepping past closed doors until I heard it. Her voice, low and urgent. I don't care how. Just find out everything you can on her. I stopped just outside the door, pressing my back against the cool marble wall. She said her name was Clara Hale, but I don't buy that she's here by coincidence. I need to know what she's been up to, who she's been talking to. A pause, then a sharp intake of breath. What do you mean she's been in contact with Mark? Bingo. I smiled to myself, savoring the moment. She was rattled. No, she was afraid, and she should be, because if she thought I was just here to make her uncomfortable, she was mistaken. I had come to dismantle her, piece by piece, and I was only just getting started. I didn't linger. The last thing I needed was for her to realize I had been listening. Instead, I turned and walked back toward the main hall, slipping effortlessly into the crowd. I needed a moment to think, to plan my next step. So she was already looking into me. That was fine. I had nothing to hide. But the real question was, why was she so panicked about my contact with Mark? I pulled out my phone and sent a single message. Did you know she still thinks you're a threat? The dots appeared immediately. Mark was waiting. What does that mean? She's investigating me. She knows I've been in touch with you. That scares her. Why? Another pause. Then, she doesn't know what I have. I exhaled slowly, turning my glass between my fingers. That changed things. I had assumed Victoria had stripped him of everything. His money, his dignity, his reputation. But if she was this nervous, it meant there was something left. Something she had failed to destroy. Something I could use. My fingers tightened around the glass. I needed to see him. I left the party early. There was no point in pushing further tonight. I had already done enough damage to rattle her. That was the key to all of this after all. Make her uneasy. Make her wonder what I knew. Make her doubt herself. By the time I arrived at Mark's apartment, it was well past midnight. He opened the door faster than I expected, his face drawn with exhaustion. The dim light of the hallway cast sharp shadows over his features, making him look older than his 58 years. "That was fast," he muttered, stepping aside to let me in. "I don't waste time." I moved past him, settling into the same chair I had taken during my first visit. He watched me warily before sitting across from me. "You said she doesn't know what you have," I said, cutting straight to the point. "What do you mean?" Mark hesitated. For a moment I saw something flicker across his face. Shame, maybe, or regret. But I didn't care about his guilt. I needed the truth. "She took everything," he said finally. "The accounts, the house, my name. But she made one mistake." I leaned forward. "She never found the offshore account." My breath hitched. Mark's lips twitched, but it wasn't quite a smile. "I was careful. I kept it separate from my other assets, under a name she didn't know. I didn't touch it for years just in case. And now," he exhaled, rubbing a hand over Anne's face, "it's the only thing I have left." I could see it now. Victoria had taken everything, assuming she had wiped him out completely. But deep down, some part of her must have wondered. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so paranoid. She was terrified that Mark had something that could undo her, and she was right. I sat back, my mind spinning. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about leverage. "You need to access that account," I said. Mark gave a dry laugh. "You think I haven't tried. I can't move that kind of money without drawing attention." I tilted my head. "You don't have to. You just need her to believe you can." The realization dawned on him slowly. "Let her think she missed something," I continued. "Let her spiral. Make her desperate." I saw it then, the first spark of real understanding in his eyes. "She'll come to you," I murmured. "And when she does, we'll be ready." Mark nodded slowly, the weight of my words settling over him like a heavy cloak. I could see the gears turning in his head, the shift from desperation to something sharper, something closer to resolve. For the first time since I had seen him again, he wasn't just a broken man begging for scraps. He was calculating, planning good. "You want to bait her out," he said finally. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "I want her to panic. I want her to think she miscalculated. She's already paranoid. She wouldn't be looking into me otherwise. We just need to push her a little further." Mark exhaled, running a hand over his face. "How?" I tapped my fingers against the armrest. "We start small. A rumor, maybe. Something subtle enough that it could be a coincidence, but loud enough that it'll reach her." Mark frowned. "Like what?" I met his gaze. "Like a withdrawal." His eyes widened. "You don't actually move the money," I clarified. "You just make it look like you are. A failed transaction, a flagged attempt, something that makes her think you're trying to access it." Mark's jaw tightened. "And then we wait." Because Victoria wasn't the type to ignore threats. If she thought there was even a chance Mark had something she overlooked, she wouldn't rest until she knew exactly what it was. And when she came looking, we would be ready. The next 48 hours passed in a slow, tense haze. Mark followed my instructions to the letter, initiating a transaction large enough to trigger alerts, but stopping just before it went through. A ghost of movement. Just enough to make someone like Victoria lose sleep. Then we waited, and waited. It was the third day when she finally took the bait. Mark called me just after noon, his voice tight with something between anticipation and dread. She contacted me. I closed my eyes, exhaling. What did she say? "She wants to meet." I felt a slow, satisfied smile tug at my lips. "Where?" "Her hotel. She's staying at the Waldorf." Of course she was. I leaned forward, pressing the phone closer to my ear. "Did she sound nervous?" Mark hesitated. Not nervous, cautious. But I could hear it in her voice. "She's not sure what I know." That scares her. Good. That meant she wasn't coming just to gloat or to make sure he stayed down. She was coming because she needed to know what he had, and that meant we had the upper hand. "You're going to meet her," I said. Mark sucked in a sharp breath. "Clara, you're going to meet her," I repeated, voice firm. "And you're going to let her think you still have power, but you won't give her answers. You'll let her give them to you." Silence. Then finally, I let out a slow breath. "It's time," I murmured. "Let's end this." The air in the Waldorf's lobby smelled of polished wood and expensive perfume, a quiet, elegant hum of wealth woven into every surface. Mark stood near the entrance, his shoulders drawn tight, his fingers twitching at his sides. I watched from a distance, tucked into the corner of a quiet lounge, my heart a steady drum of anticipation. Victoria was late, not by much, only a few minutes, but it was intentional, a power play. She wanted Mark to sweat, to wonder if she'd even show up. But she would, because she needed something, and Victoria Hale never walked away from something she needed. I saw her before Mark did. She slipped through the doors like she belonged there, chin lifted, steps smooth and controlled. Her black dress clung to her frame in sharp, elegant lines, her hair a polished curtain of gold over her shoulder. Mark tensed the moment he saw her. Victoria paused a few feet away, her lips curling into a slow, deliberate smile. "Darling," she murmured, "you look awful." Mark exhaled sharply, and I had to give him credit. He didn't react beyond that. "Victoria," he said, voice steady. "I wasn't sure you'd come." She tilted her head. "I wasn't sure you were worth my time." Mark didn't answer. He just gestured toward the lounge. Her gaze flicked past him. Just for a second, scanning, analyzing. Then she nodded. The moment they settled at a table, I shifted, keeping them in my periphery but far enough away that she wouldn't notice me. Mark leaned forward, hands clasped. "Let's not waste time. You've been watching me. I know that much." Victoria's lips parted slightly, surprised, but just for a flicker of a second. Then she smiled. "Paranoid, aren't we?" Mark's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" Victoria sighed, tilting her head as she traced a delicate circle on the tabletop. "I was wondering the same thing about you. Imagine my surprise when I hear whispers of you poking around places you shouldn't be. What exactly are you looking for, Mark?" He didn't blink. "What did you think I was looking for?" She exhaled sharply, tapping her nails against the table. "If you had anything real, you would have used it by now." Mark didn't answer. The silence stretched just a fraction too long. And that's when I saw it. Victoria's pupils contracted. She wasn't sure. She was guessing. Bluffing. I clenched my hands into fists beneath the table. Mark saw it too. Slowly, he leaned back, tilting his head as if considering his options. Victoria's fingers tightened slightly against the table. "Good. Let her squirm." Mark exhaled. "You always did underestimate me, Vic." Her nostrils flared slightly. "And you always overplayed your hand." Mark just smiled. Then he reached into his pocket. Victoria froze. For a single breathless second, her body went perfectly still. Her eyes locked onto his hand. He didn't pull out anything dramatic. No folder, no evidence, no grand reveal. Just a small, sleek USB drive. Victoria's entire posture shifted. There it was. Panic. She masked it well, but I saw it. She thought she had covered all her tracks. But now, doubt crept in. Mark turned the drive slowly between his fingers, letting the overhead lights catch on the polished surface. Victoria exhaled, smoothing her expression into something amused. Dramatic, but meaningless. Mark smiled. "Are you sure?" Silence. For the first time in years, she didn't have the upper hand, and she knew it. Victoria's fingers curled slightly against the table's surface. A subtle movement, but enough to betray the tight control she always prided herself on. For a long moment she didn't speak. She simply looked at the USB drive, her gaze flicking between it and Mark's face, as if trying to gauge whether he was bluffing. Mark didn't rush her. He let the silence stretch, let the weight of uncertainty settle over her like an invisible noose. Finally, she exhaled, forcing out a soft laugh. "You always were dramatic, Mark, and sloppy. Let me guess. Some half-baked attempt to scare me. A drive full of nonsense you scraped together hoping I'd panic." Mark smiled, slow and deliberate. "Are you panicking?" Her eyes flashed. Hardly. But there was something in the tightness of her jaw, in the way her hand twitched against the table, that said otherwise. I clenched my fists beneath the lounge's armrest, fighting the urge to intervene. "Not yet." Mark tilted his head. "Tell me something, Vic." "How did it feel?" She blinked. "How did what feel?" "Betraying me," he said evenly. "Wiping out my accounts. Selling the house. Disappearing with everything you could carry. Did it feel good?" Victoria sighed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please. Don't play the wounded victim, Mark. We both know you faked your death to avoid your own failures." "What? Am I supposed to cry for you now?" Mark didn't flinch. "You could have walked away with a comfortable cut, you know. But you took everything." She smirked. "I was thorough. You were greedy." Victoria shrugged. "Call it what you want. It worked, didn't it?" Mark leaned in slightly. Did it? The air between them shifted, and for the first time I saw something flicker in Victoria's expression, something close to doubt. Because she knew, the way she had disappeared so cleanly, the way she had covered every track. And yet, here Mark was, sitting across from her, holding a piece of something she hadn't accounted for. She had thought she had won, but now she wasn't so sure. I watched her exhale slowly, forcing composure back into place. "What do you want, Mark?" He smiled, tapping the USB against the tabletop. "I want you to listen." For a second, I thought she might get up, walk away, but she didn't, because she couldn't, not until she knew what was on that drive. Victoria's confidence cracked just a little more as Mark slid the USB drive toward her. She didn't take it. Not yet, but her eyes stayed locked onto it like a bomb that might detonate if she touched it wrong. "This isn't a negotiation," Mark said, his voice low, calm. "This is the end." For the first time, Victoria looked unsure. She had built a life on control, on knowing every angle before making a move. But now, the very man she had discarded was back, and she didn't know what game he was playing. "You want money?" she asked finally, forcing nonchalance into her tone. "A settlement? A deal?" Mark chuckled. "You think I'd come to you for money?" She stiffened. "I want justice," he said, leaning forward. "And justice means making sure everyone sees you for what you are." The blood drained from her face. "You wouldn't." But even as she said it, she knew she was wrong. She reached for the drive now, fingers trembling slightly, but Mark pulled it back before she could grab it. "Not yet," he said. "I want you to know exactly how this ends." Victoria swallowed hard. "I had my suspicions even before I died," Mark continued. "Little discrepancies, unaccounted funds, but I was a fool. I ignored them. Then you took everything, and for a while I thought that was it, that I'd lost. But then I started digging." I could see Victoria gripping the edge of the table now, her knuckles white. "And what I found," Mark went on, "wasn't just about me. Was it, Victoria?" She said nothing. "You didn't just drain my accounts. You laundered them, used them to fund offshore shell companies, fake investments, even fraud under my name. Still, she said nothing. Mark smiled. And that's where you made your mistake. Victoria swallowed. What do you got greedy, he said simply. You thought I was dead. So you got sloppy. Victoria's breath hitched. The authorities have everything now, Mark said, tapping the drive. Every document, every wire transfer, every signature you forged. She stared at him, frozen. And as we speak, Mark continued, those nice men in dark suits, the ones at the bar. He nodded slightly toward the back of the room, where two figures sat, inconspicuous but watchful. They're waiting for you to stand up, because the moment you do, your life as you know it is over. Victoria turned, ever so slightly, as if to confirm the presence of the men Mark had pointed out, and when she turned back, her face had gone blank, a mask of nothingness. She had always been a survivor, a manipulator, a woman who played the long game, but this time she had run out of moves. The silence between them stretched until finally Mark stood. He leaned down, just slightly, until his face was level with hers. You stole my life, he said softly. Now, I'm taking yours. Then without another word, he turned. He didn't look back. Didn't need to, because he knew. Within moments, the agents would move in. Handcuffs would click into place. And Victoria, she would finally face the consequences she had spent her whole life escaping. And as Mark stepped out into the night, breathing in the cold air, he finally felt it. Relief. It wasn't joy, wasn't triumph, just a quiet, steady release. The past was done, and he was free.